My name is Angus Sullivan. I work for Beam as an ambassador, helping out with the community management and also helping to organize events in London, but also in other areas as well. My background is largely, my studies are in psychology, and then after, in a professional aspect, worked in banking a long time ago now.
Yeah.
From there, I sort of shifted as far away from banking and the financial system as possible. And being based in China, got involved in cryptocurrency, largely due to the constraints on capital that they have in China. How I got to know and got involved with Beam. Initially, Initially, I learned of Mimblewimble and the first beginnings of development by Grin in about the end of 2017, and followed it loosely until recently, where I got more involved. From there, about a year ago, discovered Beam and looked more into it. The two are seen very similarly by some, but for me, the two projects are very different, and I would consider myself a community member of both of them. Yeah, it's helping essentially to spread information about Beam. So I assist with the Telegram group online and also Discord and Twitter from my personal accounts, not the official accounts, just my own personal accounts. Also with managing events, organizing events. I've only organized 2 events in London, but have also assisted other ambassadors that have organized events in China and Turkey and Korea recently. For me, the strength of a project really comes from the community. If there's a massive amount of technological development and no community, then there's not a lot of value. I would think that there's more value in projects with little technological development, but strong communities. And so for this reason, the ambassadors play a really important role. Essentially, they're just community members that want to contribute more and commit more time and effort to helping to not only grow themselves, but to grow the project as a whole and the community as a whole. I think that it's important to have people that are, or at least community members that are closer to the core team, so to speak, to have more sort of direct feedback, because with a big crowd of people, it's very difficult to sort of get exactly the sentiment and this kind of stuff. So I think the ambassadors offer a lot of support in terms of engagement and community sentiment and promotion and this kind of stuff. It's an interesting question. There's a lot of discussion about the technological side of things and what's happening in terms of development and how it's taking place and the path forward. Sometimes there's delay with software, of course, but in general, a lot of talk about privacy, because this is, after all, one of the biggest focuses for Beam. So a lot of nice discussion around privacy in terms of how you can maintain privacy online, how you can, not specific to Beam, but just in general, whether it's through using VPNs or this kind of thing, or which browser you're using on your computer. A lot of discussion around privacy. There's also a lot of discussion about price, of course, which I don't To be truthful, I don't know much about price. I don't know how it happens or why it happens. More buyers than sellers, more sellers than buyers. A lot of the time, there's another separate chat that's for price discussion, and this keeps the majority of talk about this separate to the talk about the development that's taking place, and also the talk about privacy. For me, I would like to be the only one that knows what I spend my money on. If not, I would like to divulge what I spend my money on with who I choose to divulge it to, rather than someone else also having sort of some insight into my financial transactions and then trusting them with whatever they want to do with my data. From working in the banking industry before, it's very kind of disturbing looking at people's accounts and what they're spending money on and who they're sending money to and the history of their credit cards or their mortgage or this kind of thing. And banks don't, it's private in a sense that the information is between the customer and the bank, but there's a lot of people that are working in the bank and a lot of people that are seeing this information. And I don't think that banks have much interest in the financial privacy of their customers. So for me, it's important to, it's not so much about safety, which it is for some people, but it's more about having some freedom to spend money or to transact without having to worry about who's going to look at it and who's going to see what's being spent on. This is a good question. Compared to the other privacy coins, I think that Mimblewimble offers some kind of elegance in its simplicity. It's not taking, the other privacy coins have taken Bitcoin and then added privacy on top of it. They've taken something that's fully transparent and tried to hide everything. In Mimblewimble, it's quite different, and it's essentially hiding the information by default. Now, there are some weaknesses in Mimblewimble in terms of transaction linkability, which is maybe going to be the most difficult to solve. But essentially, the other privacy coins are trying very hard to make them more scalable. Whereas Mimblewimble, at its core, one of the core features, in my opinion, is the scalability and privacy. So it makes it more adoptable and usable for people, in my opinion. The biggest similarity is obviously that they're both implementations of Mimblewimble. The differences start there. One is, or in Beam's case, it's funded by investors who receive a portion of the Beam treasury. Let me begin again. So the funding models are very different. Grin relies on donations, Beam received investment, and the investors will be repaid from a portion of the block reward over the first 5 years. So 20% of the coins mined in the first 5 years will go to investors, developers and team, and
It's okay. Yeah, that's most of them. Yeah, it goes to the...
And the foundation. The foundation will, after the initial stage of development, the foundation will take over and be the leaders of the governance of the protocol, if that makes sense. I think the biggest difference is speed. And I mean, this is both a pro and a con. Having funds and being able to invest in developers gives you the ability to develop a lot faster. Grin, which is not funded or funded through donations, the development has been spread across 2 years before mainnet launch, and it's a little bit slower. One of the benefits of being slower is that it also, it provides time and offers opportunities for more developers to come in and contribute to the code, whereas in Beam's case, the development is a lot faster due to the funding and this kind of, or this, in my opinion, is more difficult for developers to contribute and to join and this kind of thing. And also some open source developers would be more willing to contribute to a project that isn't funded than a project that is funded. Yeah, the project started, forgive me if I'm wrong, but the project started initial development around March 2018. From there, the testnets were released towards the end of 2018, and I think there was 4 testnets iterations released up until the end of the year, and then from January the 3rd, the Genesis block was mined and the mainnet was launched. From there, we've seen a few things happen. Actually, because it's a proof of work coin, the hash rate's obviously been changing quite a lot. It had a large increase initially and then dropped down and also kind of in line with price. And more recently, in the last month or 2 months, the hash rate has begun to go up, and we've had a bit more attention from mining pools and exchanges and this kind of thing. We're listed on a number of exchanges and a number of pools. Yeah. This is beyond us. We don't have any way to control the price, and it's not something that we attempt to do or try to do. I think that over time the price will become more stable, although looking at Bitcoin, maybe this is something that will take a lot more time than is expected. Volatility makes it very difficult for these cryptocurrencies to be used as payment. If you're paying someone $10, tomorrow it's going to be $10. If you're paying someone 10 Beam, tomorrow it's going to be 10 Beam, but maybe the dollar value is going to be a lot less. So in terms of adoption for payments and for savings and this kind of thing, it's a very, it's a difficult situation. A lot of the people that are involved in crypto understand this. It's a very speculative industry, and as you said, there's a lot of strange pumpers and dumpers and this kind of thing happening. We can't stop it happening, and we don't encourage it or anything like this. This is a large difference for the two projects. The emission schedule for Beam in the first year is 100 per minute, or 100 per block, with a sort of targeted block time of 1 minute. And this will only be for the first year, and after the first year, this block reward will halve. Of the 100, 80 will go to the miners as a block reward, and 20 will go to the treasury, which includes the investors team and the foundation that will take over. For Grin, it's a little bit different. It's 60 Grin per minute, or it's 60 Grin per block. with a targeted block time of 1 minute or so. This will continue for as long as there are miners, and unless the emission is changed via a hard fork, which I don't think anyone expects or is talking seriously about at the moment, will continue at 60 Grin per minute forever.
Okay.
Or for however long.
Okay, so your privacy store of value coin.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've looked at Bitcoin's emission schedule and based it off this, and like you said, for reasons to target a store of value and later on also be used as a means of exchange. I think often gold is looked at in terms of a store of value, and it's a very poor means of exchange. But I think that the two aren't mutually exclusive for digital currencies and cryptocurrencies. Beam Core is related to the development side of things. So the main layer 1 network, the other developments that are taking place sort of outside of the blockchain, one of which was launched previous to mainnet, and this is the address system, the SBBS addresses which we use. So mainly the Beam Core is about the overall development of the network. I mean, for me personally, this is one of the most important things. I mean, I think that a lot of the value of any of the cryptocurrencies come from the community. And especially in my role as an ambassador, this is one of the most important things. I mean, whether it's just engaging communication with the community and sorry, can I remove my phone?
Go for it.
It's vibrating. Okay. Yeah, community, I mean, it's important. This is one of the things most important to us, is building a strong community that can further contribute to the ecosystem as a whole. I mean, this is where the value in many things comes from, a mutual understanding and a community that support and agree upon the value that's there. For engagement and activity, we can look at the amount of conversation that's taking place in the channels, whether it's on Telegram or Discord or comments and likes and retweets on Twitter. For growth, we can look at the user numbers or the followers and this kind of stuff. But apart from that, it's a challenging metric to kind of have a great understanding. As I mentioned off camera, that a lot of what's happening with the numbers and the amount of activity is directly related or directly correlates to the price. I mean, the price goes up and everything is great and everyone's working hard and this kind of stuff. Everyone's getting excited. As the price goes down, the users are slower coming in. There's not so much engagement and it's a lot quieter. And I mean, I think this is seen in general for the crypto communities. In 2017, at the end of 2017, there was a lot of online activity and a lot of engagement and speculation and this kind of stuff, whereas 2018, it was very quiet across the board. Beam compliance is largely focusing on how this new cryptocurrency and digital world can link back to the old financial system of sort of banks and this kind of thing. At the moment, it's very difficult to. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty around regulation and how to be compliant with Bitcoin, but especially for privacy coins. I mean, it's right now with Zcash and Monero, they offer ability to provide some insight into the private transactions that take place for a wallet. But if I'm not mistaken, it's only on one side. So you can only show what's being sent from your wallet, but you can't have a full wallet audit, so to speak. The Beam compliance is one of our big focuses, and it will be to do with how users can essentially retain and their privacy whilst also sort of fitting into line with their tax authorities or governments and remain compliant essentially.
Yeah, I guess that seems to be another main difference between Grin and Beam. Kind of, maybe they'll come with this in the future as well, but how you become auditable and being and kind of bridging that gap between the old financial system and new economic system. You see it as there has to be this bridge rather than this new world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the greater the divide, the more difficult it will be to bridge later. So in my opinion, it's a focus to sort of bridge the gap as early as possible, so that I mean, a lot of people, some Bitcoiners or some other people think that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies will sort of replace the traditional financial world, which I don't see happening personally. I mean, it would be nice, but so I think until something drastic happens, then I mean, the ability to remain compliant within the system that exists and as far as I can see will continue to exist for some time is really important. I mean, right now it's very difficult living in London. There's no way to prove my income or to prove or to remain compliant if I'm not being paid in the pound. If I'm paid overseas in US dollars, or if I'm paid in New Zealand dollars, or if I'm paid in Bitcoin, then the tax man, I don't know what they're called here, they don't recognize this, and it's very hard to sort of prove your income and this kind of thing. I think that the more sort of tools, so to speak, that we have to remain compliant whilst also being somewhat outside of the traditional system is really important, and I think there's a lot of value for both individuals and businesses on this front. Right now, the governance is by the for-profit company that's up until now done the development. The governance will shift to the foundation that is funded from a portion of the treasury that comes from the block reward in the first 5 years. Governance is, like you said, I mean, it's something that's very difficult, whether it's a funded project or a non-funded project like Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, it'll be a challenge. For now, the sort of goals and path is to shift the governance of the protocol to a foundation that's being set up at the moment.
Okay, and who will be part of this foundation?
Right now, I don't have any information on who the foundation will include.
I guess on the paper it says that you want it to be not from the initial team.
Yeah, it'll be, I mean, I don't know if it'll be completely separate from the old team, or whether there will be some members of the team currently also in the foundation. But it will be made up from my understanding, it'll be made up from a wider and more dispersed group of people than the team currently. It's very, as we've seen with Bitcoin, it's very difficult because the project is rather decentralized. It's very difficult to make changes or to decide on changes, which means that stuff happens maybe slower, but in a more safer manner to some degree, maybe. Centralization makes decision-making process a lot faster and more efficient. But of course, there's trade-offs. Right now, it's reasonably centralized, but I think that this centralization and decentralization is often put into this or that. But there's a lot of, in projects that are often called decentralized, there's also a lot of centralization, just in a different form. I think at the moment, with the core developers and the funding that's going to the core developers, it's a little more centralized than some projects. But in saying that, something like Monero, although the decision-making process is probably less centralized, there's still some degree of centralization in all of these projects. And I don't think that, it's always seen as a very negative thing, but at the end of the day, I think that of equal importance, which is often overlooked, is the centralization or decentralization of the network itself. If the developers decide that they want to do this, and the miners decide that, no, we don't want this, and we're not going to support it, then there's, the network doesn't follow the developers, whether it's decentralized or centralized. Of course, the miners are incentivized to go with the core developers, but they're also incentivized to go where they think is best for the network as well. Everything's used for illegal things. Bitcoin's used for illegal things, and it's not private, it's a public ledger. Cash is used for illegal things. Bank account transfers, SWIFT transfers, everything's used for illegal things. It's not a very good defense, but yeah. I think that in general, illegal stuff is going to happen, whether it's private or public. The big difference is that, the majority of use for whether it's private or public, I think is not illegal. And so I don't know. I'm not a big proponent of governments and laws and this kind of thing. Of course, I don't encourage illegal stuff, but I think that privacy is a human right and should come before a lot of the stuff that is kind of is given to us by states and this kind of thing. If for a lot of what I see from the communities, the crypto communities, not many people see Beam as a cypherpunk coin, and maybe I'm have strange ideas or thoughts, but I do see it as sort of a part of this cypherpunk movement. Privacy is at the center of it, and I think that developing and moving forward in tools that we can all use for privacy is incredibly important. I guess that people that have experience with development and online development and technological side of software know what's being done with our data and what's being or how privacy is being taken away from individuals, whether it's by governments or corporations and this kind of thing. I think I mean, for the average Joe, they're not so aware of what's being done with their data and how corporations or companies are using the sort of privacy backdoors that are in a lot of software to profit from people's data. I think there's a lot of interest in China for privacy coins and coming from two kind of directions. One is that the majority of privacy coins, or the major interesting ones, are proof of work, so they're mined. And China has cheap electricity and a large kind of mining culture for Bitcoin and also other coins that are mainly GPU mined. The other side of this is that in China there's a lot of online payments. A lot of people transact with Alipay or WeChat, and there's no privacy here. These platforms are monitored, and if you do something wrong, you get your accounts shut down, not just your financial accounts, but also your personal sort of social media account. The other thing is that there's a lot of controls on capital leaving China. So or at least as a foreigner, if I wanted to change my money from RMB to another currency, there was a $500 a day limit. So if I want to go on holiday next week to Bali, I would have to go each day and change $500 to the other currency. If I wanted $10,000, if I wanted $2,000, I'd have to go 4 days in a row to exchange $500 each day. So I mean, and a lot of the time, these kind of capital laws and restrictions are to do with AML and anti-terrorism funding and this kind of stuff, which I think is a nice way to sort of restrict people without real justification. I mean, the majority of money laundering is taking place with banks, not with individuals that are wanting to change small amounts to go overseas. I mean, it's like I mentioned with me coming here, if I use my card, then people can see where I'm going and this kind of thing. For the interview, it's not so important, but for other stuff, maybe it is important. I don't want to talk about I want to say about the situation in Hong Kong without getting into too much detail.
Yeah.
People were using cash to take the train, so they hadn't been seen at the protest, or they didn't have that sort of link between the financial transaction and their presence at the protest. And I mean, this is important not just for this kind of event, but I think in general to maintain this privacy is really important. For me, it's a very interesting thing, both privacy and the technology that's being developed by a lot of companies and a lot of individuals, and I think that it's a really important thing that's been overlooked, and I hope that it's going to sort of come to the attention of more and more people moving forward.
Oh, just wanted to take a photo.
No problem.
Of the thing. Okay, cool.